It certainly is a pleasure to be able to address all of you this evening. I realize it can seem kind of out of place for someone my age to be engaging in public speaking, especially about politics. And you may be wondering why it is that I'm up here talking about issues that most of my peers seem to know nothing about. After all, the rest of my generation doesn't seem to care. Why should I? As you know, my generation is one that speaks a different language. We use our cell phones more for texting and taking pictures than for talking. We download music and movies to our iPods, and we upload pictures and videos to our Facebooks. We tweet. We communicate in frequent, short bursts, like sound bites. Young people today are surrounded by the most incredible means for communication. Technology is improving on a daily basis, creating vast information outlets. There are more ways to learn, to be educated, and to stay informed today than there were even a decade ago. So you'd assume that my generation would be the most learned, the most educated, and the most informed, especially about important issues like policy and economics. Unfortunately, they're not. My generation isn't well educated on the principles that made America the most prosperous free nation in the world. So when teachers and statesmen begin presenting socialist ideas as good and capitalist ideas as bad, we have no way to challenge those thoughts. That's where im2moro comes in. im2moro believes that we can't lead a nation without a clear set of ideals to guide us, and that these ideals must be understood by all citizens. We call these ideals the first 7 principles, and we believe they have the power to reunite, re-engage, and re-inspire Americans all across this nation. Now remember, I told you that my generation speaks in sound bites, short, abbreviated phrases that make up our own language. In order to combat those teachers in our classrooms who use creative modern media and those statesmen who speak in catchphrases like hope and change, we have reduced each of our principles into one word, making it easier for us to remember and communicate them. The first ideal we call justice. It's the idea that our representatives in government should pass laws that are just, not just popular. If a law restricts your freedoms without protecting you or your neighbor, is this a just law? What if a law requires you to buy something you don't want to buy? Is that a just law? Now, we at im2moro don't believe that we should break a law to change a law, but we do believe that if a law is unjust, we should break the silence to get it changed. The second principle we call prosperity, or the principle of sound money. It's the belief that printing more money won't solve our nation's financial problems. We use the word prosperity to represent this principle because sound money, or stable currency, is required for prosperity. If you and I are running low on money, we can't just decide to print more. That would be wrong, and it would probably get us thrown into jail. But you realize that since 1971, that is exactly what our government has been doing, printing money as it needs more of it. Doesn't sound logical, does it? Well, I can tell you, our trading partners around the world don't appreciate it either. My friend in the Czech Republic is constantly reminding me that the decisions America makes about its finances directly affect him in Europe. Our government has foolishly confused prosperity with free money. Our third principle is happiness. Really, this principle is the power of the free market to enable the pursuit of happiness. When we were trying to come up with a word to represent the free market, happiness kept coming to mind. And it makes sense, because one of our country's biggest draws is the ability for all men to be able to freely pursue their dreams. We call it the American dream. And people from every nation in the world have come to our country to chase theirs. So many people today think that happiness is the finish line of the race, and that mindset is reflected in our government's policies. But I would like to suggest that the American dream is and always has been the ability to run the race. We can't let this beautiful ideal be crushed beneath the burden of regulation and bureaucracy. What about this one? Principle number 4, the sanctity of private property. Soundbite version, security. We believe that what's yours is yours. And when our government officials begin taking more and more and more and more of what's yours through taxes of every imaginable kind for every unimaginable project they can dream up, then it's time we get some new representatives. Principle number 5 is one that really speaks to me personally. Responsibility, or self-governance. Over the last 100 years, we've seen Americans shift more of their personal responsibility to take care of their private property, their family income, and even their relatives to a faceless bureaucracy. What they don't realize is that when we give up our responsibility, we also give up our authority. When we don't take care of ourselves, we no longer have a right to say what goes on in our lives. And the same can be said of our country. If Americans don't start shouldering the responsibility to care for their nation, one day they will find they have no say. Principle number 6 is liberty, the belief in constitutionally limited federal government. You see, our Constitution laid out clear boundaries for our federal government. And today, our government is way out of bounds. The bigger our government, the more intrusive into your lives and your freedoms it becomes. A recent Gallup poll showed that 57% of Americans believe the government is trying to do too many things that should be left up to businesses and individuals. And 45% think that there is too much government regulation of business. This, my friends, is not liberty. And finally, number 7, peace. Look, we know that the best defense is a strong offense. But we also know that we must choose our battles carefully, or we will spread ourselves too thin. My dad served in the military, and I have a very deep sense of pride and appreciation for the sacrifices our servicemen and women have given to protect our freedoms. But I also see potential for our government to misuse our military. Our military prowess is nothing to be ashamed of, but we must use it wisely, and we must use it constitutionally. Well, now you know where im2moro stands on the 7 principles. Unfortunately, most Americans my age know nothing about these principles or even realize their importance in America today. So how do we at im2moro turn a nation back to the ideals that most of us don't remember? First, we have to understand them ourselves and how they apply to issues today. Next, we must educate. We have to be creative and strategic in getting our message out there. We have to find a way to reach the soundbite generation. And finally, we must hold our politicians accountable to these principles regardless of their political party affiliation. The elections in November proved that now is the time to take a stand and fervently promote and defend these principles. im2moro is the voice that can bring this message to the national stage. My generation is the one that will bear the tax burden and the loss of freedoms. The America of today is being bought at the expense of my generation's future. We have no one to represent us. We have no voice. but we believe that im2moro can give us one. We believe the time is now. Because if we wait for someone else to take a stand, if we wait for someone else to speak out, if we wait for someone else to make a movie or launch a website or post a blog or make a contribution, we may soon wake up and find ourselves living in a very different America. And by then, it will be too late. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. And I hope that something is stirring inside you to help us, to join us, to do this together. Why am I so passionate about this? Why am I standing up here? It's because I am tomorrow, and it's worth the fight.